Hey, Gino, welcome to the hot seat with Charlie and myself. Glad to have you here.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Yeah, really looking forward to talking more about SDR practices and how to be the best rep you can be. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, we're pumped to chat with you. You joined in our second cohort late this year, and you've been an awesome addition to the community. Would love to just open up the conversation by understanding as the year wraps up. We're recording on December 18th now. Probably release this in the new year. What was it like for you being in an SDR outbound role during the COVID pandemic?
It was definitely interesting. It definitely like switched up a lot of things for me. I remember when it first hit, it was kind of just like pandemonium. Everyone's kind of like freaking out, like on our end and like people I'm talking to. So it definitely changed the way I thought about like outbounding, and I had to pretty much like change really quickly of like how I was going about it, and my talk track on everything I did. Pretty much my whole process kind of changed though for like those like 3 to 4 months where it was really hitting businesses hard. So yeah, it was a lot. It was just a big change. It was like everything that I learned like the like 3 or 4 months was like, ah, let's put that away. Let's like come up with something like brand new and start there.
That's awesome.
What? So you're at Udemy, which is a learning focused company, a learning focused platform. You know, how do you personally approach learning, and how did you make that transition to try different things and find a new approach?
Yeah, I mean, I joined Udemy because I love learning. Like it's something that I really like books, like continuous learning, like not just like in a classroom type thing, like always learning, it's like our big motto here. So like I really joined because I really love that. And it's something that I do, every day. Like I prioritize it, like just as like I prioritize calling or, emailing or things like that. Like I always spend at least 30 minutes trying to learn something new. One, because it makes me like a better rep, but like prepares me for the future, and two, because it's really fun. So yeah, I'm really happy to be at Udemy and at a company where like the mission aligns with my personal mission as well. So I forgot the end of that question. Sorry, man. I kind of went on a go Udemy and go learning chant.
No, that's good. Basically, just how you approach learning, and as you mentioned, the way you needed to do outbound change this year over the summer. How you made that switch, or how you found new tactics to try.
Yeah, it's a good question. The biggest thing that I changed is like that when it was all happening, like the pandemic, things like that, like my pitch of like asking for time, kind of like having a really short 1 to 2 minute conversation wasn't like really working. So my typical talk track, like now it's like coming back to it. It's like, hey, my name's Geno. I'm calling from Udemy. I know I probably caught you at a bad time, or like I know no one likes cold calls. I was hoping we can have like a minute or two to talk. And that was kind of like my basic opener. When COVID happened, it was like, I don't want to talk to you. And like, it really wasn't that kind of like more aggressive type opener wasn't really doing well. So what I had to change was just like having like a longer conversation, like, hey, how are things going with like COVID? Like, how is your company adjusting to it? Like, how are things on your team? That kind of conversation. And then eventually leading into like Udemy talking about asking for a meeting. That was the biggest change, like I had to like really go into like rapport building and relationship building on like the phones, and even like my language in the email wasn't as like salesy or like kind of just like more direct, which is kind of like my baseline approach. But that was the kind of the biggest change that happened there. And it really just, it honestly all spawns from learning, like seeing what's happening out there, throwing away what you have, just going with what works, and then just continuing with that.
So two questions for you there. I feel like in the seller buyer sphere, that sort of COVID talk track is really staled out too. People are like, yeah, like it's fine now, and I don't want to talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
And like, have you readjusted back? And as you've readjusted back, have you taken some of the learnings that you maybe had got around being less salesy, or softening your message a little bit from having to do that out of necessity into how you open and how you start conversations now?
Yeah, that's a really good point and a really good question. It definitely influenced how my calls are going now, and how kind of everything goes for me now. When I started in sales like a year and a half ago or something, I've been always focused on like selling the meeting and not necessarily selling the product that you're selling. And I think that's still a really important tenet, but it's also connecting with someone on the other line and actually like having like a real human, conversation. And, a human conversation isn't like, hey, I called you out of the blue, but I want to set up some time to talk on their calendar. Like that, like some sort of stuff like that is so important. But now like I'm trying to like bring back that baseline kind of that with the rapport building that I really had to focus on during COVID.
So I noticed one of the things we noticed actually right away about you is that you weave in a lot of humor into your day, just on, I know you're doing some other type of influencer stuff on different platforms, which is really funny. Do you leverage any of that for rapport building, or what's your sort of go-to rapport building, tactic to really make the conversation go a lot easier and build trust between you and the prospect?
Yeah, man, I think humor is so important. It's kind of like, I guess like my personal brand. I'm like I love humor. I think sales, like it can be like a tough role, especially if you're having like a tough time. I think it's so important to like, have fun with it, and not get like too serious and too bogged down by like the day-to-day activities, especially as like a BDR, SDR, ADR. Just making tons of calls a day, facing tons of rejection. I think it's just so important to like have fun with it, make jokes with the coworkers and stuff like that. When it comes to outreach specifically, I definitely use humor as like a pattern interrupt. So if someone like says not interested, I'm like, oh, really? Like, was my pitch really that bad? Like, I apologize, or something like that. Like, I try to like make them laugh. And if I could hear them like chuckle or something on the other line, 8 out of 10 times is gonna like lead to like a successful call. So that's kind of how I know something's going well. If it's like we're having like they laugh, we're having a good conversation, and I just kind of make it a little bit more human.
Do you think that's something that being humor that all SDRs or BDRs should be doing?
I don't think so, man. I think there's so many different ways of being successful as a, outbound sales rep. It's pretty wild. Like some people on my team, some people that are on LinkedIn operate completely different than me. But I mean, the numbers like speak for themselves, so I don't think it's essential. I think, to me it is, because that's like how I operate and that's who I am, as a person. So like, it's like authentic, and people like understand authenticity even on like a 2-minute cold call. So for me, it's essential. Right. But like, if that's not who you are, I don't think you like have to weave it into your messaging or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I know early in your sales career, one thing that was important to you was surrounding yourself with mentors. Would love to hear your thoughts about that and how you did that. As you know, it's one of the biggest focuses for us at SDR Nation with our career coaches and the one-on-ones that we try and support members with. So curious how you put that together for yourself, if you have tips around that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have like a group of people around you, like in the similar area, like outside of your actual company. Just like to bounce off ideas off each other, and like have they like on the same career path, like just have a community around you, like we were talking about before. It's a really tough role, especially like if you're not doing well. So just like having other people kind of on you, like on a similar career track and similar goals in like 5 to 10 years, it just makes everything easier. You know what I mean? It just makes the whole process. And if you have like a tough week, tough month, just having people there for you is like really important. And then on the other end, like having actual mentors who are like VPs of sales or account executives that you want to be like when you're, progressing down your career path. It's kind of like goal setting. It's almost like, you're in a position that I want to be in like 5 to 10 years. Like, let's like talk about this and like, how do we move forward? So it's really important to me. And it also comes down to mental health too. Like, let's like talk to each other. Let's have a good time with this.
How'd you build that network?
Sorry, there's like something in my throat. So LinkedIn's been the biggest one for me. Luckily, I've had some like posts, like getting a little bit of traction on LinkedIn, and I've been able to meet so many really cool people. So just being authentic on LinkedIn, posting some cool stuff and meeting people through there. Also, like I think people undervalue how willing people at like internally at companies are like willing to help other people. From my experience, everyone I've reached out to at Udemy at my previous company has been super receptive to, talk, help me out, and just talk about career goals, anything like that. So I think really just asking I know a lot of people like don't want to ask. It's like, oh, they're so busy. Their calendars are like really like jam packed. But I guarantee, like, if anyone like listening to this and like wants to like have some mentors and have some people to look up to and like talk about career and life and sales and things like that, if you just ask to like talk to them for like 15 to 30 minutes, I'm pretty sure that they're gonna be receptive to it, because people like helping other people at the end of the day.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. Until I learned that lesson, that there's so much, willingness to help, and I always thought there was, had to be some give and take relationships, some sort of skin in the game from both sides, reciprocity, right? So, well, why would they want to take time with me? What do I need to offer them in order, for to take time with me? But you're right. I mean, a lot of people just want to help. We're even seeing it now in, SDR Nation with our career coaches, that we're, more and more coaches, managers, AEs, leaders are reaching out and saying, I want to help. I want to just coach SDRs and give back. And it's been really amazing to see that, that amount of giving is going on in the world right now, which is great. Maybe to move it over to, your thoughts around, the state of being an SDR right now. Like, maybe give me some perspective of like, other peers, other SDRs that you're talking to. How's everyone feeling these days? And how do you feel like SDRs in general are doing out there? And, any sort of words of wisdom for them, or motivation for them, right now?
Yeah, I think it's really tough, especially for like new SDRs and people who are like kind of just getting into the sales world, and even like experienced reps. Like the remote work, has its pros and cons, but for such a hard role that the SDR and BDR like life can be, especially if you don't have the tools under your belt, like you don't have your process down, you don't have like your talk track, you don't have like everything kind of like internalized. Working from home during this job, I think, is like really, really tough. And I feel for all the new hires that come on board, at Udemy and things like that. I try to help out as much as I can at companies like everywhere. So I think we're in a really tough spot. It's such a great environment, and like everyone's making mistakes on the sales floor. Like you could hear like calls go bad, even from experienced reps. Like, kind of how it goes. But if you're just in your own little silo, it's like, oh, maybe I'm the problem, you know what I mean? Which is just totally not the case. You don't have that like direct feedback. And one of the things that made me when my first job, like one of the things that made me a really good rep is after every single live call, me and my little table would like talk about the call and talk about how it's going. So we don't have that in a remote environment. So I think the solution is really just building a community, having other, remote SDRs that you can talk to, and having that office environment as much as you can virtually. So like SDR Nation, it's amazing. There's a whole bunch of people in the same boat talking about similar things. Helpful for like actual like performance, like hitting your number. But two, it's like really important, like just mental health, like in the role, you know what I mean? Just like having other people at different companies, different things in your same role that you can just like talk to and be like, hey, had a really tough day.
Totally.
Can't really talk to my manager about this, but here we are.
It's true. That was one of my favorite things about being on the team, or sitting next to my peers, right? You get to turn to the side and have that conversation. So I definitely miss that. I do think once this passes and vaccines are out, a lot of SDR teams will go back to the office, because that part is so important. But I know there's companies out there, like I know Kevin Dorsey at Patient Pops launched a fully remote team, permanent remote team. We're going to see more of that. So it'll be interesting to see how communities like SDR Nation can impact that. I got to ask you about the course that you mentioned earlier before we started recording, that you're putting together. It's an outbound sales course. I don't think I've met an SDR who's built a course before on sales. That's pretty badass. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's about like 70% done. Really, the reasoning behind it was, I'm a big learner. Like we talked about, like always learning. Like it's a pretty big thing to me. I love like reading sales books and stuff like that. Like the Challenger, Kevin Dorsey just released a course on Udemy, B2B Sales Masterclass. Taking that right now, and it's really good. There's a lot of great resources out there. but there's just not that many courses and books and resources for outbound sales development, specifically for like SDRs, BDRs, and ADRs. Like it seems like most of the courses, books, everything everyone's producing is for like closing sales, like in the account executive roles specifically. And there's just not that many resources within for people just starting out, and like how to book meetings like with C-level and like the DMs. Like how can you book like 15 to 20 like meetings a month? Like how can you actually do this? And like there's not a centralized place for it. So I was like, okay, there's like an opportunity here. There's a lot of people I think that would be into it. And for me, it's just like, luckily, you know, I've learned a lot in the last year and a half. I'm pretty successful. I have like my process down, and there's a lot of SDRs and BDRs that I've talked to that are starting out and they don't really have like kind of their go-to things. And companies are so different, right? Like some companies are really good about training and like helping salespeople out, and then some companies aren't. So if you're not in that, if you didn't get lucky with that and you don't have like good coaches for you, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of resources out there for SDRs right now.
Give the viewers a sneak preview on maybe some of the content or the themes that you're going to be including in the course.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the 4 pillars are prospecting, outreach, metrics and review, and then motivation. I think those are like the 4 things that like, if you get all 4 of those things down, like you're going to be a good rep. Like, and it kind of, and that's like how the course is broken up. So we go in detail about prospecting, details about the different forms of outreach, you know, like your base layer, email, like calling, LinkedIn, and then kind of like the creative cool stuff, videos, blind calendar, invites, texting, kind of like the new type of stuff. And then evaluations, like always checking on like how things are doing, how talk tracks are going, like that. And then the 4th one, motivation, like it's a hard role. Like you have to like stay, you know, on top of it. And like, how can you still be motivated, you know, to do well in this role when it's like things are tough? So that's like what the course is covering.
Any last, you know, words of wisdom for all the SDRs listening to this or watching this out there to maybe give them a little bit of that motivation to keep going? What would you say to everyone?
I would say connect with other SDRs and BDRs, you know, talk to people on LinkedIn, like we were talking about. People are really receptive to help. People are like willing to talk to each other, you know, go over things, whether that's best practices or whatever that's just like mental health, like, hey, we're in this together. So reach out to as many people as you can, you know, find people above you that you really look up to, that you want to have as your mentor, and just talk and connect with other people in this remote time. That's my biggest piece of advice right now.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Geno. Appreciate you coming on the hot seat.
Yeah, this is really fun, guys. I really appreciated it. And I love this project that you're doing. I'm going to watch episode 1 right now. So, you know, keep going on. And yeah.
Thanks a lot, man. Take care.
Cool.